Happy Thanksgiving. I hope that all of you have had a wonderful start to your Thanksgiving day. Welcome to Thanksgiving. And, here we are. I don't know how COVID has impacted your Thanksgiving. I don't know if it has shaped what you're doing, what you're able to do or not. But in light of our COVID Thanksgiving, I was reminded of an old sermon. It goes way, way back. I didn't hear the sermon, obviously. I only know about it from stories. It's a fairly well-known sermon, Thanksgiving sermon, by a guy named William Stidger, Stidger. I don't even know if he's alive anymore. I doubt it. But William was in fact, I'm sure he's not alive. William was a pastor in the 1930s during the peak of the Great Depression. And that depression, somewhat like COVID, was not just something that influenced one state. It influenced our country, but influenced more than our country. The Great Depression really influenced the world. It was a worldwide depression. People all over the world were suffering. So William Stidger was sitting on his front porch one day with some pastor friends and some other friends from churches, and they were just talking about the suffering that people were experiencing, their friends and family. They were lamenting the fact that there were actually people in their community and in their families who had committed suicide, people who lost everything and saw no hope. There was a level of joblessness that was unbelievable. Almost everybody in one way or another was impacted by the loss of jobs. And they're having this conversation, and as pastors, they started to lament, how in the world do you preach on Thanksgiving, given what is going on in our world? How do you fake joy? How do you try to convince people to be grateful when everything is broken and there is so much loss? And as the pastors sitting, the group of men were sitting there discussing that, William Stidger said that he felt the Spirit of God leading him. Didn't hear a voice, and it's hard to say how that happens, but he felt the Spirit of God leading him to say, rather than talking about giving thanks, why don't we just do it? Let's not talk about it. Let's just do it. And as he had that thought, that what they ought to do this Thanksgiving was just practice gratitude, he began thinking about a woman that he had not thought about for years, a woman who really, more than probably any other single person, was influential for him becoming a pastor. Now, she was one of his teachers. She was an English teacher, and William, in telling this story, didn't say that she was a Christian, never said that they had any religious conversations, but she said that this woman gave him a love for literature and a passion for telling stories, and that shaped his pastoral ministry. And I understand that myself, being able to love literature and reading the Bible for all the beauty that's in it, and figuring out how to tell stories. And he thought of this woman, and he thought about how grateful he was to her, but he thought, I don't know if she knows. I don't know if, I haven't talked to her for years. So he decided, he didn't live in the town where he grew up anymore, but it wasn't hard back in the 1930s to figure out a way to be in contact from people from the town where he grew up. Found that she still lived there. She was still alive. He got her address. So he wrote a note of gratitude to his old English teacher and told her how grateful he was for the love of literature and the love of a good story that she inspired in him, and told her how that had shaped his life. A week later, he got a letter back from her. And he said, in telling the story, he said she began her letter by saying, "My dear Willie." And he talked about the fact that, here I am in my mid-50s, and I'm getting bald. Nobody has called me Willie in years. But he sat down and he read this note. And this is what she wrote. My dear Willie, I can't tell you how much your note meant to me. I'm in my 80s, living alone in a small room, cooking my own meals, lonely, and like the last leaf of autumn lingering behind. And then listen to this sentence that she wrote. You'll be interested to know that I taught in school for more than 50 years, and yours is the first note of appreciation I ever received. It came on a blue, cold morning, and it cheered me as nothing has done in many years. And William said he sat in his living room reading that note, and he said, I'm not a sentimental guy, but I found myself weeping over that note. And how grateful he was that he took the time to write it. And as he's sitting there thinking about that, he has this flood of thoughts of all kinds of other people in his life who also shaped his life. People to whom he was extraordinarily grateful, but he may have never told them that. And again, because he had decided, rather than talk about Thanksgiving, I'm going to actually do it, he decided to write a bunch of notes. And one of them he wrote to his old bishop, a man who was the bishop of his denomination when he entered the ministry many years earlier. And this bishop had been caring to him and encouraging to a young pastor when, you're filled with idealism, but then idealism hits the real world of the church. And this bishop had been just a source of comfort and encouragement and wisdom to him. And he knew from contacts that this bishop, that his wife had just died the week earlier. So William sat down and he wrote a note to this bishop. And he explained how grateful he was for the influence of this bishop in his life, that he was such a good mentor to him, such a source of encouragement, and such a source of hopefulness when it was really needed in his young life. And again, within a week, William got a letter back from his bishop, and this is what it said. My dear Will, your letter was so beautiful, so real, that I sat reading it in my study, tears falling from my eyes, tears of gratitude. Before I realized what I was doing, I rose from my chair and I called her name to share it with her, forgetting for a moment that she was gone. You'll never know how much your letter has warmed my spirit. I've been walking around in the glow of your letter all day. It's an extraordinary thing that you and I can do when, rather than talking about Thanksgiving, we just decide to do it. Now, I don't know how God receives our gratitude, but obviously, here were two human beings who were deeply moved when someone took the time to say to them, thank you for the influence in my life. So I think that today on this Thanksgiving, even as William was able to, in the midst of just horrible loss, the Great Depression, he decided, I'm not going to talk about Thanksgiving. I'm going to do it. So let me just tell all of you that I am so grateful for all of you. I know that this is not an opportunity for a live chat like we often have, but I love the opportunity to connect with you when we normally do. I'm grateful for your encouragement. I'm grateful that you just show up. I'm grateful for the opportunity that we have to meet, even digitally. I'm thankful for things like coffee, even the smell of coffee. Stella sent me earlier in this whole COVID thing, I mentioned I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and not long after that, I got a big box in the mail with my name. And usually when things like that are delivered, it's like, hey, Scott, you ordered something, but it had my name on it. And I opened it up, and there was this huge container of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And I'm so grateful for coffee, the smell, the taste. I am grateful for the great blue heron. I love watching the great blue heron. I'm grateful for pileated woodpeckers. I don't know if they are, but if you know Woody the woodpecker, that's what he was, a big old woodpecker. And this time of the year, I think they're migrating. So a lot of times when I'm sitting in my tree stand, I'm sitting there with my binoculars watching pileated woodpeckers, these big old blue woodpeckers, monstrous woodpeckers that land on trees and thump holes in trees. I'm grateful for my mom, grateful for my dad. I miss him deeply. I'm grateful for his influence on my life for many years. Grateful for my family, my sister and brother. Grateful for their kids. I'm grateful for my grandparents. Only had one set of grandparents, my mom's mom and dad, some of my favorite people in the world. I'm grateful for their influence. And grandfather died in 95. My grandmother died, 5 years ago now. And miss them a lot. Grateful beyond words for my kids. And I am grateful, just joyfully grateful for the delight of my grandkids, Tucker and Macy, and one who is yet unknown. Can't wait to meet him or her. I'm grateful for the churches where I grew up. I never know how to answer that question. I was a little kid at Reedsville, a little church in farm country Reedsville. Loved those growing up years when I got to play on farms, crawl in silos, feed the hogs. It was wonderful. Grateful for what was then called Boulevard EC Church on the corner of 21st and Tillman, St. Lucas and Tillman, where I spent my childhood years. Grateful for the people at Lancaster Grace Church, where I moved in 8th grade. All of these churches were filled with adults, many of whom were not perfect human beings, but people who genuinely loved God, and they were people of faith, and they lived it out. And I got to see what faith looks like, and I'm so grateful for that. I am grateful to God for the gift of salvation, the hope that we have because of it. And I am grateful to God that however He worked it out, He gave me the opportunity to be a pastor and to spend a lifetime learning the Bible and teaching it and being with people in some of the most joy-filled and some of the most heartbreaking experiences of life. All of it has brought to me even those horrific times when I struggle with God and wonder why it is that He has allowed certain calamities to fall on families and certain individuals. But even in all that, I'm grateful to God that He's given me the opportunity to be a pastor, and I thank Him. So I would hope that today you'll take some time not to just go through the day of Thanksgiving, but to actually do it, to give thanks. There are so many people who've shaped our lives, so many good things, from coffee to apple pie to the crisp skin of a turkey. All kinds of good things. And I think our God, and other people as well, but I think our God is delighted beyond measure to hear our gratitude. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving day. Make it a day not just to talk about thanks, but to do it. So love you all, and happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you in a few days.